Your hometown of Safeton has been ravaged. Its citizens, your friends, have been taken captive by vile reavers. And you have vowed vengeance and justice for those killed in the raid, and those still held prisoner. Clues found in the rubble of your town have led you south, and burnt-out village after burnt-out village gives stark evidence of the cruelty and power the raiders possess. Your reputation as heroes and adventurers have put you in contact with the Council of Lords, who are desperate to see an end to the massacres and the kidnapping of their people. A beleaguered-looking old man stands before you, and as you take in his bedraggled appearance, you recognize him as the Safeton's leather worker, a good man named Marius, whom you've done business with in the past. Now an escaped slave greets you at the council meeting rather than a leather worker, his words filled with sadness, but also holding key information you'll need if you're going to be successful against these villains.
So you're the ones, then. I think I remember you in Safeton. I sold you some armor and goods, yes. 'Tis good that it is you. You struck me as forthright heroes from the moment I saw ye. 'Tis no dungeon beasties you faced now, friends. No, 'tis the most foul and cruel sort. Orcs, yes, but also evil men and women who trade in flesh and misery. I managed to escape, but me daughter Ilaria, I think you remember her fondly, do you not, warrior? They are being kept in holding cells in the sewers of Highport. Entrance to them can be gained through a secret door I discovered in the back of a ruined temple they've consecrated to honor their foul god of the orcs, Grumsh. Not many know about it, I think. If you're careful and go in well equipped, you might be able to rescue them. Rescue her. Will you take up the cause then, heroes? For her? For the people of Safeton, who still live and demand justice?
Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, RPG Retro Reviews. I'm Captain Courageous, and I review old school modules and games, reveal fascinating trivia, and do my best to give them a fun and informative analysis. First off, to all of you out there, I hope you are doing well during this time of crisis and staying safe. As it turns out for me, with my DJ business, things are kind of shut down until further notice here in Maryland, so I guess I'll be using my free time to make some more videos. This week, I'm going to take a look back at A1 Slave Pits of the Undercity, the first module in the A series, Area of the Slavelords. The entire Slavelord series is fondly remembered by many old-school gamers, and while the premise of this module is certainly intriguing, its execution leaves a lot to be desired. There's a lot to cover with this one, so let's get started. Spoiler warning, this one is definitely a deep delve, so if you would like to play this, you might want to direct your DM to this video, as I will be providing a lot of suggestions on running this. The origin of this series stems from TSR's 1980 tournament at Gen Con 13. The entire series of modules takes place in the Pomarge region of Greyhawk along the Wild Coast. The despoiled city of Highport serves as the backdrop for the adventure. Once a human city, Highport is now overrun with humanoids, orcs, goblins, kobolds, ogres, and gnolls, as well as human outcasts. The premise of the module is that bands of marauders have been terrorizing the Wild Coast for years, ravaging coastal villages and taking the citizens as slaves. The lords of this region have been so far unable to mount an effective offensive against the cruel ravagers, and the primary location of the slavers' base of operation remains a secret. With the slavers' attacks becoming more egregious, something must be done. An overt offensive would most likely alert the well-defended slavers, and loved ones and kin that are being held hostage would be in great danger. So, instead of a massive operation, small bands of adventurers have been hired to infiltrate and destroy the slavers. Through rescued slaves, it is determined that a burnt-out temple in Highport serves as the slavers' base of operations, though it is only one of several, with other more hidden and secure locations elsewhere. A lot of the incongruity in this module stems from its use as a tournament module at Gen Con 13, with encounters coming at a fairly brisk pace to allow for the time allotted and scoring. Further, to flesh out the adventure for non-tournament use, the maps have been significantly expanded upon and more encounters added. Thus, to me at least, this ruined temple seems overly dense in occupancy, with everything from orc guards, a haunted cemetery, ghouls, wights, and deadly vegetation, and that's just this section here of the upper level of the burned-out temple. So, in my opinion, the DM will need to seriously examine this module and sculpt out or modify the encounters. Certainly the Den of the Basilisk, the Wight, or the ghouls can simply be ignored or modified and replaced with atmospheric encounters that stress the creepy nature of the place. Perhaps remnants of these creatures, who surely would have been wiped out by the temple's denizens, might be found. For example, lifelike statues in the basilisk's den, or bones and gnawed corpses in the area where the ghouls in white once occupied. Given the premise of the scenario, such a crowded place for so many encounters seems highly unlikely. It breaks verisimilitude. Fine if this were a tournament, not so much if you're running it as part of an ongoing campaign. I am a big fan of the premise of Gygaxian naturalism, whereby one presupposes a world influenced by the things the rules suggest, and certainly the occupants of the temple would not allow such a conflagration of nasties to remain in place where they need to conduct business. A detailed perusal of the map of the temple level reveals that it is divided into two primary sections. There's the unused burned out section, and then there's the temple section. The only way to get from one to the other, besides the primary entrances provided, the secret passage at 1, the tool shed at 7, and the main courtyard at 16, is through the sewer levels. There are 4 possible entrances to the sewer level: beneath the altar of Grumsh at 18, or the trap door in the floor at 12A. In the burned out section, there is the altered crypt in the cemetery at area 8. There is also a set of stairs that leads down into the sewers here, but on the map it's not exactly marked well. One has to deduce the connection through context or a very careful reading of certain connecting encounter areas. And if you aren't careful, the 2 stairs could inadvertently be crisscrossed in your mind. The primary action of the module takes place on the sewer level, and there are several exciting set-piece encounters that players will probably enjoy. Of course, this module is famous for introducing the aspis, the ant-like species that somehow not quite explained in the module has been co-opted into the service of the slavelords. Traversing through their nest is quite dangerous. The drones attack with 2 broadswords, defend with 2 shields, and are 6 hit die creatures, making them very effective in combat, with good attacks as well as armor and a decent number of hit points. Their larvae are not as effective, but are 5 hit die creatures, and they spit acid. There's a great set-piece encounter in room 18A, the slave pits themselves, which is a giant room split with cages. The doors open up to the top of the cages with 6-inch wide beams to walk across to get to the other side. Just traversing this section is potentially hazardous, but that's made even more so when the Aspis warriors attack. There are some fine ad hoc rules here to account for the dangerous topography, as characters in Aspis attempt to keep their balance over the slave pits while trying to knock their opponents below. Rooms 20 and 21 provide the final battle and climax of the module potentially, though there is an end run around this, as you can see on the map. This is really an interesting setup with some compelling terrain features. A large round room surrounded by a moat of sewage. One can only imagine how foul the smell must be here, and working here must be rather unpleasant. there is a narrow 3-foot ledge connected to the main platform by 3 arched stone bridges. To the east is an alcove where an unnamed slave lord is going about his business. He's a 7th level thief. On the ledge surrounding the room are 10 orcs. The thief is attended by 5 giant weasels. Let the final battle commence. Interestingly, Area 20 is a trapped stairwell, and heroes entering from that direction may find themselves inadvertently dumped into the center platform as they fail to detect the collapsing stair trap there. This is a very cool final boss battle, but it could be greater if the DM takes the time to flesh out who this slave lord is beforehand, as in the module he remains unnamed. And that gets into the entire setup for involving the PCs in this adventure to begin with. To me, the core issue with this module is that it lacks a compelling overarching villain. The setup provided by the module is stunningly weak, and as I said earlier, several of the encounters only make sense in the context of a tournament. Scourge of the Slave Lords was a super module released by TSR in 1986 that combines modules A1 through 4 into one super adventure and greatly expanded upon the connection between the modules. There's a storyline introduced, that of Dame Gold, a potentially wealthy patron in the town of Safeton that gets kidnapped by the slavers, and the clues lead the heroes to Highport. For some reason, this super module doesn't seem to be available at Drive-Thru RPG or the DM's Guild. Further, attempting to buy the physical copy on eBay is stupidly expensive, running around $70 on up. I'll be honest, I pretty much hate everything about the entire Dame Gold storyline. There is a ridiculous subplot introduced about Dame Gold's brother needing this one-of-a-kind potion to alleviate some condition he has similar to lycanthropy. Right as the PCs set about on this mission and are leaving, news arrives of the town of Windy Craig being sacked by raiders. Thus, the PCs are given the choice of pursuing the mission to help Dame Gold's brother, which is a good mission, or investigate the sacking of Windy Craig. If they choose to continue on their mission, they are actually penalized in the module for doing so, especially if the characters are lawful good. So honestly, skipping the super module is no big loss. However, my suggestion is that well before you introduce A1 slave pits of the Undercity into your campaign, you lay the groundwork for the slave lord's existence. The Scourge of the Slave Lords modules assumes that the heroes have just finished the Temple of Elemental Evil super module, and their success is the reason they are invited to Dame Gold's house and to attend her party, and then invited on the mission to save her brother. As a side note, the 3 super modules, Temple of Elemental Evil, Scourge of the Slave Lords, and Queen of the Demon Web pits compose the first published D&D complete campaign and is sometimes referred to as the Greyhawk sequence. Ideally, what you want to accomplish with the setup is to establish a town and compelling NPCs that the heroes identify with, drink with, perhaps have along on an adventure or two before the hammer falls. Slave Pits of the Undercity is for character levels 4 to 7, so that gives you 3 character levels to establish your setting and NPCs. Certainly just starting your campaign in Safeton is an option. Basic internet searching will reveal some great background information on that city, certainly enough to base the start of a campaign in Greyhawk. The Wild Coast itself is pretty awesome and well detailed as a starting point for a Greyhawk campaign. I know in my own campaign many years ago, I started off with the classic Tower of Xenopus from the Holmes basic set, and Port Town became Safeton. The pirate-infested waters of Woolly Bay certainly make that a viable transition to justify the pirate cave in the Tower dungeons. The kidnapping of Lamunda the Lovely, the Baron's daughter, is part of a plan to use Lamunda as a hostage, as the Baron is already pressing on a course of action to deal with the slavers. Later on, I introduced a short adventure that took the PCs out of Safeton for a brief time, and when they returned, the town was sacked, and their friends had been taken as captives to be sold as slaves, and the Slave Lord arc was begun. Next is the town of Highport itself. Just having the PCs making their way through a mostly lawless city run by orcs will be a great transition story-wise, considering their initial adventuring lives headquartered in a lawful town or city like Safeton. Having them track down the slavers' base in the city without arousing suspicion on themselves and discovering the secret entrance is a compelling adventure all on its own. And all of this before you get to the first module of the series. For additional resources and details, let me also suggest that you check out the TSR supplement, Slavers. This is a resource released in the year 2000 by TSR for the second edition of the game and gives tremendous detail on the Wild Coast region, the Slavers operation, and includes a map of Highport with missing details that the Slavers tournament modules don't provide that, in my opinion, will give this story premise the weight and presence needed to make the series even more compelling and memorable. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Against the Slavelords reprint from Wizards of the Coast, released in 2013, that not only brings the A-Series module to a hardcover premium book, but also includes a brand new module written by Skip Williams, Danger at Darkshelf Quarry, that can serve as an introduction to the Slavelords campaign. Of course, I'm going to do a review on that, but at the end of this series to wrap things up. The art for this module is by Jeff D., David S. LaForce, Jim Rosloff, and Bill Willingham, and is a hodgepodge of decent pieces and complete disasters, and is some of the weakest work for the time period. Jeff D.'s work on the cover depicting a battle with a party of adventurers and one of the Aspis, and the back cover art depicting an adventurer about to sneak attack an orc is pretty darn good, but it's the interior art that falls short here in my opinion. This module was very popular and saw wide distribution, and as such can be acquired on eBay relatively inexpensively, with copies ranging from $10 to $20. Better yet, you can get a nice new print-on-demand copy on DriveThruRPG for only $9.50, which includes the PDF. The last few prints I've gotten from them have been really good. The paper they are using now is a semi-gloss, and the ink is nicely dark and easy to read. So if you're just looking for a module to run rather than collect, you might consider acquiring the module that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at Slave Pits of the Undercity on my D20 rating scale of style, presentation, and value. Style-wise, this is your basic 1981 TSR 24-page package, and what many consider the classic TSR style. The cover art is good, but the interior layouts are not representative of the best TSR had to offer, so I'm going to rate this a 14. Presentation is the biggest issue here. A lot of the page count is dedicated to running the module in a tournament. There are tournament maps, tournament player characters, tournament scoring, and so on. That leaves very little room left of these 24 pages to set the module up for an ongoing campaign, which is probably how 95% of the people purchasing the module ran it. There's no City of Highport map or any real details of the city itself other than it's an orcish city run by chaotics. The rest is left to the DM to flesh out. Otherwise, you're just starting at the temple trying to figure out a way in. The adventure setup is stunningly minimal. This is a compelling premise, but it's executed rather poorly. If you played in this module back in the day and you loved it, give a lot of credit to your DM, because there is a lot of work to be done to give this compelling premise its due. The interior encounters on the temple level are overly dense and need to be scaled back to make sense. However, there are a lot of really great encounter set pieces, as well as an interesting new monster species, the Aspis, and certainly when people look back on this module, that is part they look back on with fondness. So it's a mixed bag. A lot of hit and miss, but despite its shortcomings as the first module in a very popular series, it ranks as a classic, so for this reason, I will give it a generous 13. Finally, let's look at value. There is a lot of playtime here, but darn it, to get the heroes to the secret entrance of the temple, which is essentially the beginning of this adventure, is going to take some prep work from the DM. However, acquiring this module is not overly difficult or expensive. Either eBay for an original copy or DriveThruRPG for a print-on-demand copy will not put a dent in your pocketbook. So I'll give it a value of 18. And that brings the overall rating of A1 Slave Pits of the Undercity to a 15. Good. Just a word on the ranking here. One might think that I don't like this module, and I do, but I consider it the weakest of the 4 modules in the series. And of course, I'm going to go ahead and review the entire series over the next few weeks. You can thank my Patreons who voted the Slave Lords modules as the next thing they wanted me to review. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you found this video informative and useful. My DJ business has pretty much been shut down to non-existence due to the pandemic, so you will certainly see a big spike in content over the next several weeks, as I'm basically working from home at this point. If you could please help out the channel and make a purchase on the Drive-Thru RPG links that I provide, as they are affiliate links. If you find that you want to purchase something I suggest, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, a big shout out to my Patreons who have been very generous by supporting me. Finally, please subscribe and click the little bell, as you will get notifications when I upload more content. Like, comment, and share. Join the RPG Retro Reviews Facebook group and consider supporting the channel by becoming a Patreon. As always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.